I am Manuela. Here are also Luciana, Sofia.
I am Fabio. We are from Argentina in Bariloche.
Nice. Well, here we're in Groningen. Chin, Luis, and Barbara.
And Pablo from the train.
Welcome, Pablo.
Welcome, Pablo.
Luján from Córdoba.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Diego from Colombia.
Diego.
Hi, Janif from Wageningen, from the Netherlands also.
Hi, I am Fernanda from Bariloche, Argentina.
Hello, I am Lucia from Chubut, Argentina.
Yeah, hello, I'm Lionel from Sirat in Benin.
Hi, Lionel. Oh, there's Vanya too. The earliest one. Good morning, Vanya.
Hello, Vale.
Vale.
Nice to see you.
Good morning, nice to see you too. Well, I'm Valeria from Argentina.
Hey. We miss you, Valeria, here.
I miss you too.
Okay. Anyone wants to present himself, or shall we start? Camila?
Hello, I'm Camila from San Martín de los Andes, Argentina.
Okay.
Welcome.
Welcome everyone. I'm going to change to the seminar presentation, and I'm going to change the camera. So you can see, yes. Okay. Okay, shall we start then?
Yes, I think
Okay.
we can start.
You can see the screen correctly?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, welcome to this seminar. I am Fabio Trinco. Thanks, Pablo, for this invitation. It's a good place to meet each other. Well, we are from Argentina, Bariloche. We are from the KIAF group, founded by Pablo Titonel. And I am a bachelor in environmental sciences and a PhD in biology. And we work in INTA. It's an institute here from Argentina that works in agriculture topics. So the title of the seminar is Sustainable Livestock Production in Native Forests and the Effect of Land Use over Soil Parameters. The first part is my PhD work. Particularly, I'm going to talk about two topics, forest productivity estimation and native tree regeneration. And the second part is about my post-PhD work. This is about an assessment of pristine sites, soils, and to assess the effect of land uses over soil parameters. Here in the background is a photograph of our study sites. These are the Andes area, and this is an example of livestock production in the Andes. Well, as an introduction of my PhD work, here is a map of all the native forests worldwide. And here is a red rectangle showing which are our forests, our native forests. This is South America, Argentina. And there is a detail.
Sorry,
Fabio, we cannot see your presentation.
we see the first one only.
Okay, thank you. Let me see what happened.
Now we see your mail.
You have to share the entire screen, not only the active window.
And now?
There it is. Now we can see it.
Yes.
Okay.
Introduction.
It's okay? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. So, particularly over all the native forests in Andes, this is our region of study, because here we find the Coihue cypress ecological sites. These are the sites with the potential of have high forests, like this you can see in this picture. And a particular situation of this area is that the winter and the spring is wet. We have a lot of precipitations, but in summer is usually dry. So I put this image showing that the soil has a lot of water in spring, but in summer is drier, just to remember how is our study area. Well, what's happening? It's common that in the forests, producers raise cattle, but the presence of cattle in the forest has two main effects. One of them is the reduction of tree seedlings regeneration because of grazing and trampling. And the second one is the favor of the presence of grasses, because grasses are tolerant to grazing, different from the native species that we have here in our forests. The consequence of this is that the high forests change to other alternate states that can be of low forest or grasslands. Many times this is not wanted because...
Sorry again. I think we cannot see the presentation.
Can you see the presentation?
We're still in introduction, and there's only the map of the world and the square on your area.
Can you see the pictures?
Fabio, you have to stop sharing and then share again, share entire screen.
Okay. There you can see the pictures.
Yes.
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 Okay, I don't know what was going on. So this is the different situations we can find our forest, the presence of cattle and different uses of the forest can change the alternate state we can find the forest in other types, for example, low forest or grasslands. So one first question we had in our PhD was how to estimate the livestock receptivity in these forests, because we have a lot of heterogeneity, in order to estimate the ecosystem service of forest production. This is our first objective to solve. And the second one is, well, what happens if we want to recover our forests, for example? We can just take out the cattle and our forests can recover. Well, we had a question because these grasses is a new stratum of herbs that weren't present before. So we didn't know which was the effect of the grasses over the tree seedlings. So the second question we had is, which is the effect of the grasses over the tree seedlings in order to recover our forests? Can you follow me? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So our overall objective was to understand the ecosystem service of forest production and possible compromises with native tree regeneration. As a specific objectives, we have which are the regional and field determinants of forest production. For this, we had two specific objectives. One was to study our forests with satellite imagery, and the second one was to study which are the field determinants. For example, tree canopy openness, the coverage of herbs, the type of soils, some information we wanted to include. And about the second part of the thesis, we wanted to test which is the effect of grasses over tree seedlings in natural conditions. For the third objective, we used these exclosures we installed in the field, as you can see in the picture. And also we installed a greenhouse experiment to control almost many variables that we can't control in the field, and to test specifically which is the effect of grasses over seedlings. This is a very short presentation because the thesis is too long, so I will just some spots, important spots about my results. Well, this is our study area, this red rectangle, you can see it here. And this is a detail of how our forests. And for this first objective, we studied only these zones of openings in the forest. So the first step was to separate the openings from dense canopy, and then to extract the NDVI values only from the openings. This objective was to study the openings of the forests. This is because here is the most concentration of fresh production in the openings. The main results of this study, we found that the type of the vegetation was very important to determine the forest production. And also that we found 6 quantitative variables that were the most important to estimate the forest production. And we also found that the effect of these variables were not the same in each season. For example, do you remember the summer is very dry here, so the mean annual precipitation has a positive effect only in summer and in the end of summer, where the soil is drier. Other thing we found is the altitude has a negative effect. In spring, we think this is because in higher places, the temperatures are lower, so the productivity is less in that season. Also, we found that the wet slope orientation of the mountain has a positive effect on forest production because of the water contained in the soil. And we also found some interesting effects of the shade of the opening. We found the negative effect of the shades that had too many border, and a positive effect in summer. We found a negative effect in spring and a positive effect in summer. We think that as long as the opening has much border, in the spring there is a competition for light because water is not limited. By contrast, in the end of summer, where the water is less, we think this is a new hypothesis to test actually, that there is a facilitation effect because the shadow of the trees help to conserve the water in the soil. So this is why we find this difference effect in each season. There is a paper about this, if you want to read it. This is the name. About the second and third objective, we studied these exclosures in the field, and we divided them into parts. One part was for studying the forest productivity. We harvested the biomass and put them in bags in order to assess the amount of biomass in each exclosure. And the exposures were disposed in a gradient climate of precipitation and also from altitude to study acceleration variables. And the other half was used to assess the effect of grasses over the tree seedlings. So we installed a part without grasses. You can see it here, a bare soil part. This was manually created by us. And we put seeds in each part, in bare soil zones and in grass zones, in order to test which is the effect of grasses. The main results of the forest productivity assessment was that, well, we estimated 5 different models because many times we don't have all the information from the field, so it's interesting to make an expedition estimation of the forest productivity. So we estimated 5 models. A complete model, a model with regional and site variables, other with only regional, other with only field, and one with the NDVI variables. And here are all the best variables we found to estimate. And here you can see that as long as we add more variables to the model, the goodness of it is better. So what we can conclude about this is that as long as we have more information, the estimations are better. But many times, it's useful to have an estimation without going to the field. That is very useful because it means a lot of resources to go to the field and take measurements. So this is very helpful to make an estimation without going to the field. As an example of the effect of the variables, in this graph, you can see in the x-axis the NDVI, and in the y-axis the forest productivity. And the circles are the measurements of the field, and the crosses are the predictions of the model. So you can see that, for example, in the first panel, the canopy openness is low. This are very close forests. So as long as the NDVI increases, the productivity does not increase so much. This is because of the shadows of the shadow of the trees. But differently here, for example, in the last panel, we have open areas, and the effect of the NDVI is stronger. So here we have an interaction between the variables, between NDVI and canopy openness. About the third specific objective, we studied which is the effect of grasses over tree seedlings in natural conditions. We used here generalized linear mixed effect models because we have a lot of variability between farms, so we included the farm as a random variable. So we can specifically test which is the effect of the presence of grasses. This is very useful when there are a lot of climate or heterogeneity between the sites, and you want to test a particularly variable. In this graph, you can see the importance of the variables. They were all important, and then interaction was also important. The variance explained was not so high, only 10%, but anyway, we found an effect of the presence of grasses. We found that the presence of grasses reduced the tree seedling emergency by 27%. But we also found that there are many other factors we didn't study that are important to predict what happened with the tree seedlings. This was our last specific objective, to test in controlled conditions the effect of grasses. We put 36 pots inside the greenhouse with different grass coverage and with different water treatments. So we had 12 treatments and 3 retreatments for each treatment. And we tried to simulate what happens in the field. We saw in spring, and we tested what happened at the end of summer. This is one graphic that shows the results. Here in the x-axis, you can see the grass coverage of pots, and in the y-axis, you can see the relationship between the surviving seedlings and the emerging seedlings per pot. And here in the columns, you can see the difference between a bare soil microsite and a grass microsite. And in the rows, there are the different watering treatments. So, for example, in the high watering treatment, as long as the coverage of grass increases, the number of seedlings stay constant in this species, that is Chilensis, Cypret, and some decreases for boiways. The other is the green one species. But when water is less in the pot, the effect is much stronger. For example, here, 65% of grass coverage reduces strongly the number of surviving seedlings. And the same happens in the low watering treatment. And also, a grass microsite, when the seed falls in a grass microsite place, there are very little seedlings surviving. And no one in the low watering treatment. They were all dead. So after this, we found that both microsites occupied by grasses and an increase in pot grass coverage had a negative effect over tree seedling establishment. As a synthesis of my thesis, we found similar effects in both satellite and field work. The type of vegetation was of high importance. We found different goodness of fit depending on the information of the models. And the tree canopy openness was very important in order to estimate the forest productivity. And about the tree regeneration, we found also similar effects. We found a negative effect of grasses over tree seedlings. And we can conclude that if even we remove the cattle from the field, there is a negative effect after the cattle is removed because of the presence of grasses. Okay. So as an output of my PhD, I generated an application, a web application to estimate the forest productivity in forests. The first step was to estimate the canopy openness. Do you remember it is an important variable? And then you can enter whenever you want to, just to see and to try it. This is an estimator of forest productivity with the models used in the PhD. And you can draw, for example, a polygon and get an estimation of the forest productivity. Okay, now finishing my PhD, I will present my second part, is the post-PhD work. At the end, you can make questions and comments, just it's a little more. Well, my PhD, the framework project is to evaluate the soil usage and management practices in Northwest Patagonia to contribute to adaptation and mitigation to global change. Particularly, I'm going to show here and today one objective of my post-PhD work is to evaluate the effect of different land uses and management practices over soil health by analyzing parameters such as soil organic carbon, pH, electrical conductivity, bulk density, and other parameters. And the first question we had to start this work was how to evaluate the impact of land uses or soil properties. Because we have a lot of uses, but we need something to compare with. And we had a lot of heterogeneity here. So we first started to think as how to compare, or with what to compare. So we had an idea. The first step we think was to model how the soil might be without human use. And for this, we can analyze soil from piston areas and then estimate a model to predict how the soil might be using climate and topography and ecological sites. And as a second part was to calculate the effect of use as the difference between the current soil status and how the model can predict if the soil was not used. Can you follow me this idea? Okay. This is an example of some pristine sites, another used sites. So we want to have data from both sides in order to compare. For this work, I recompiled 24 sources, including journal publication and non-publications, including 4 different biozones, 18 different ecological sites, and 4 general uses: seasonal cultivation, perennial cultivation, livestock, and forestry. This is our first recompilation. I have a lot of papers and work to add, but I have still no time. But this is the first step. We found more than 2,000 samples, almost 3,000, from which 700, more than 700 are from pristine sites. So this is very useful to do what we planned. What data we have? Here is the map. Each color of the map is a biozone, and each point is a soil sample. Many are from the same field, so they are all together. And we have many data from pH in water, organic carbon, bulk density. We have more than 1,000 samples. Organic matter, total nitrogen, conductivity, and texture data. This is the most available information. So to start, I used one parameter. We have a lot of data, is soil organic carbon. And we want to test which is the impact of human over this parameter. Here in the figure, you can see how many samples we have. In most of the zone, we have less than 200 samples, but in some areas, for example, in this yellow area, we have more than 600 samples. So we have a good data set to make an analysis. The second step was to estimate the soil organic carbon in those samples we didn't have the data. We did this with the soil organic matter. There is a relationship studied by many authors. We can multiply the soil organic matter by 0.58, and we can get a good estimation of soil organic carbon. A second step was, well, it is known that the texture has an important implication over soil organic carbon. So here in this figure, you can see the heterogeneity of our soils about texture. Many of them are sandy loam, others are loam and sandy. We have very little soils with clay texture or silty clay. So the most common is the sandy loam texture. So here we started to test which is the effect of soil texture over soil organic carbon. This is the first result. The adjustment is low, but still we have an effect we can use. The relationship is what you can see in the screen, 0.045 multiplied by the sum of silt and clay. We also studied other relationships. For example, here in the x-axis, there is the annual precipitation and the soil organic carbon. We have a better adjustment here. And the other one was the mean annual temperature we have a good adjustment. Remember, we want to make a first estimation in pristine sites. We want to generate a model to estimate in pristine sites. So, watching the data, I found that we only had data of texture in only 500 samples. So we wanted to extrapolate in other samples, if we can, to have more data to make our model. So for this, I used predicting variables, altitude, slope, aspect, mean annual precipitation, mean annual temperature. In order to estimate the texture in those samples, I didn't have the data. And for this, I used Google Earth Engine. It's a common geographical tool to make calculations and estimations. Is very useful. And this is the first results with the samples I have. The main variables, or the more important variables to estimate the texture, were the altitude, the mean annual temperature, and the mean annual precipitation, and also the slope were something important. And this is the adjustment, a good adjustment because we have a lot of heterogeneity here, so it's very hard to make a good estimation. So we are fine with these values. And we also tested with some samples. We had the data, but we didn't use it in the model in order to test how good is our model. This is an intermediate product for the estimation of soil texture in Northwest Patagonia with the values we have from the samples. As you can see, for example, the most common texture is sandy or unsandy loam, but in the valleys we can find other type of texture because of the falling of the small particles over the lower areas. You can also enter here to watch it and to send me comments and to watch it only. So we are now ready to give our first step to make our model to estimate how is the soil carbon without human use. So this was tested with these variables: ecological size, climate, predicted texture, and geomorphological variables. And this is our best model, the minimum adequate model. But our work was not useful because the texture was not important in this model. Anyway, we had the map of texture if it's usable. And this is the best model to estimate how is the soil carbon without human use. As an example, these are different ecological sites. This is all data from pristine sites. And in the y-axis is the soil carbon. And you can see there is a lot of variation. No? We must try to explain this variation. After applying the model, here we can see the difference between the real value and the value obtained from the model. So despite we have still variation we didn't explain, well, we are better. We can estimate, for example, how a lenga forest might be without human use. Or for example, a meadow without human use might be without human use. Okay, so with this model, we are ready to give our second step, calculate the effect of use. And just to remember, it's the difference between the sample value of the used area and the prediction of the model for that place, using all the variables I showed you before. This is our one of the first results. Here you can see the difference between the soil carbon of the sample and the soil carbon of the model. You can see different uses, for example, forestry, livestock, seasonal intensive cultivation, and perennial intensive cultivation. You can see that in all cases, the soil carbon is lower than the predicted model. So all uses change the soil carbon in the soil, And these are difference between the classes. So each use has a different situation for the soil. It looks like the forestry is the better for the soil compared with other uses that make a greater reduction of the soil carbon. You are following me until here? Okay. So you can see there is a lot of variation here. We have a lot of data together. We started to divide and to see what's happening, adding more information. Here is the same graphic, but different with different particular uses. For example, in seasonal intensive cultivation, we have horticulture and cereals. In fruit, we have, well, this is only fruit, vine plantation, and livestock. But we also divided the information by ecological site. So here we can see, for example, that the fruit production is not the same to do it in a cypress ecological site or in a Motofaguston Bay ecological site. It looks like the Chilense site is more vulnerable to the fruit production, for example. Also, we can see that the livestock effect is not the same in every ecological site. For example, in the meadows, it looks like there is a negative effect, but not so strong as we do it in the Astroceros chilensis site.
Is the more vulnerable.
Okay, can you follow me until here? Okay. We also added some information. We had this, thank Andrea Cardoso. She was giving a lot of information about the uses of this zone. So here we have the effect of different managements and different uses. For example, here we have horticulture for productions without agrochemicals and organic. We didn't have information of conventional production. The fruit production also has some difference. For example, the conventional and the organic seems to be very low, and the without agrochemicals is better. Because here we have a lot of producers with a lot of variation also. We want to start looking inside here what's happening and why some are better and others not. And the livestock, we also find there is an effect of the load of the livestock. For example, well, contrary to something we were thinking, the light load was similar to the heavy load. But the meadow seems to be more resilient to the livestock, for example, because they are higher, and the moderate load also higher. Well, we still have many things to watch inside here to see why we are finding this. And the last thing this is very fresh information. Sorry for the mess, but I try to show the last results in order we can discuss. Here we have different uses, different managements, and different periods of use. How long the farm was with that use. For example, here in the first panel we have horticulture with, for example, 5 or 10 years of use compared with 14 years of use. So it looks like that the more time passes, the horticulture without agrochemicals seems to recover the soil organic carbon. Other thing we can see, for example, the heavy load with livestock in Astroceros chilensis sites seems that as more time passes, the carbon is lower with the time. Different happens with the light load and the moderate load. So the carbon seems to recover. We have a lot of things to analyze and to think. But, well, these were the last analysis. And just to close this presentation, I also made an estimation of soil organic carbon with all the data, both from used and pristine sites, in order just to make an estimation of soil carbon in Northwest Patagonia. This is because I want to make a paper with this data. and here you can also find this link. You can enter here, and you can well see that the estimation of soil organic carbon are well from 0 and 3 or 4% in the steppe. Is there is a little rain here in the east. And in the Andes, we have a lot of variation. This is very useful because we can see how is the heterogeneity of the soil carbon. For example, these blue areas are the sites of Pumilio notophagous forests. They contain a lot of soil organic carbon, and they are many times pristine sites. Different from the valley, it's very commonly used for production.
And the spread is
And the what?
the
The green one?
red
Yes.
over the
yes.
side.
Yes, and the red parts are the highlands. It's the most rocky parts of the mountains, so they have very little carbon in the soil. So that's all for today. Thank you for hearing, and well, I appreciate very much your comments because this is a very new analysis. So your experience, your comments, your ideas are very welcome. Thank you very much. Are you alive?
Yes, they're alive. Very nice presentation, Fabio. And yeah, very nice this map that you're making. Like, yes. And I have a question from the PhD one.
Yes.
So the presence of these grasses stops the growth or interacts negatively with the growth of the seedlings, and so then which would be the option? So like those grasses are dependent also on the grazing to continue, or so if we take out the grazing, let's say, those grasses will still be there, or do they depend on this grazing also to be maintained?
Okay, the question is very good. Thank you, Barbara. We discussed a lot about that because the grasses are tolerant to the cattle because they have risk-proud mechanisms that can well tolerate the grazing, the crumbling and the grazing. But the native species are more adapted to the natural conditions of the forests. So if we remove the cattle, at the beginning, we think these grasses will be there and will be nullifying regeneration. But if we leave the farm resting a lot of time, we think that those grasses will lose in front of other species that grow naturally in the forest, because the cattle will not be there, and the faster growing plants and the shading of the shrubs will make a competition. And we think that the forest will recover, but after longer times if the cattle was there. So we think that's the most important conclusion about our work, that a farm that have cattle in his history and there's grasses in the field, we can still recover the forest, but we need to leave the farm to rest longer times than if the cattle was there. Do you? I explain myself.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And okay, thank you. Camila is raising the hand.
You can know. Anyone has a question?
Someone before me.
Right. That's it. Okay, sorry.
William was also rising.
Yeah, first, Camila, no problem.
No, you raised it first, I think. Or
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know.
Okay. No, thank you, Fabio, for your presentation. Really amazing. Your postdoc. I had two questions about that. The first one is about the model to estimate the soil textures. I'm curious because I work with soil. And in your model, you had some parameters that is common to the soil formation, like climate, like topography. But I didn't see anything about the parent material or the biota or the time. That is a really important factor in the soil formation. So it's difficult, especially for the parent material, because finally it's the rock, and the rock is maybe the kind of depending on the kind of the rock is finally the soil. Yeah. But it's a good model. That is my first question. Did you consider maybe, I don't know, in Colombia we had the different parent material to the across the country. I don't know, in Argentina, I'm sure that maybe you had too. Could be interesting to include the parent material in that model. And the second question is about that. Are you going to validate the model? Because okay, maybe you can, with your model you can say, okay, maybe in this soil we had silt, or we had on this soil is totally clay, or is clay loam, or something like that. But maybe could be interesting to take a sample in that area, and to check that the model is correct. Is a kind of validate the model, something. I think. And my final question is about the analysis about, for example, in this moment I had the same problem, because I had a lot of variables about my cross management, or different practices about the coffee crops with different farmers. And I really wanted to know what is the effect of that practices in the soil. But also I had a lot others variables to the soil, like pH, like organic carbon. So I really didn't know what is the effect to the practices, agronomic practices, and what is the effect to the variables to the soils, different to my main variables, that in my case what soil is assigned. So I tried to another model or another analysis, and in my case what the redundancy analysis. And also I tried to a partial redundancy analysis. In that partial redundancy analysis, you can see what is the proportion to the practices and what is the proportion to the covariate. That in this case, for example, in my case, pH was not a variable, was more covariate according to the soil science. But also I could see the effect to the practices. Was amazing, because, for example, in my research, almost 33% to the effect to the proportion was explained for the practices, and only 22% to the proportion to the answer was explained for the covariates, like organic carbon, like pH. And so could be nice maybe to try that kind of model, and maybe you can see what is the real effect to the practices and what is the real effect to the other covariates that you had a lot of variables. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, your questions. Well, the first thing is that we don't have a good map of the pristine materials in our zone. In fact, we want to make the first soil maps of good resolution from here for Patagonia, because we have very general maps for our entire country and for the provinces. But when we start to watch with zoom in our region, you find that the limits are very grosser, or very bold, and the map are not fine for specific situations for the field for the farmers. They are general maps that are fine for a country situation or country analysis or province analysis. But when you want to study how is the soil here or there, from, I don't know, maybe 10 kilometers or 20 kilometers, they are all the same. So we don't have that specific data about the pristine materials of our soils. Maybe that's something we can add. Here the soils are mostly originated by volcanoes and the drops, ceniza, no sé cómo se dice. Ashes, things from ashes. So they are very similar in that way, but we have a lot of heterogeneity because the presence of rocks. So we must take that into account here. Well, that's the idea. We want to do that, but we don't have the pristine materials data. Which was the second question? Sorry.
Validate the model.
Validation, yes. We made a validation with our data. Here I'm going to show you texture here. You can see the presentation? No.
No.
No. Okay, wait. Sorry. Pardon.
Es una hora, 1 hora y media.
Una hora.
Quedan 4 minutos por hacer
Sí.
las preguntas.
Well, I used some of the data. Sorry, I can put the presentation. Some of the data is there. 70% for training data and 30% for validation. So I tested how the model was, if it was good or not, to predict data where I know what is there. And the adjustment is of 65%. So despite there is some variation, the model is quite good. But anyway, we still need some more data from other places, for example, the higher places for the mountains, or I don't know, some areas that we didn't sample.
Fabio?
Sí.
So now Camila, and then there's questions in the chat.
Yes, sorry. I can't find here. Yes, Camila?
Yes, hi. Okay, so I have some questions, but most of them we can discuss later because we're basically working together. Can you hear me?
A little low.
Yes.
Okay, maybe the microphone is, I will take off the, can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, this microphone is very bad. Okay, so I have a couple of questions, but we're working together in some of these things, so we can discuss them later. I just want to ask one thing now, which is about this pristine estimations, because you divided by ecological sites, but these are determined by vegetation mainly. So my question regarding that was about two things. First, how did you determine the meadows? Because for what I've learned of this region, you have the forest and the steppes as extremes because mainly of precipitation and temperature, but also, I would say precipitation mostly, But then you have an ecotone, and this is very difficult to determine as a pristine site. From the literature, it has always been difficult because it has a lot of history of fire and usage. So determining the pristine conditions, it's a bit hard because of this, I would say, especially if you use vegetation as a determinant. So how did you do that? And then when you estimate the pristine conditions for different land uses, this is linked with the other thing. How do you determine what those pristine conditions are for each land use? Because I'm listening to myself from Barbara microphone.
Thank you.
So because different the pristine conditions, if you think that the horticultural use is in a meadow or in a steppe or in a native forest.
Yes, there are two good questions, Camila. Thank you very much. Well, the first one is that for the pristine sites, we used publications that specifically say that the samples were taken in pristine sites or undisturbed sites, and they state this site is from Astrocedro chilensis. This site is Notofauston Bay. So I had in the publication the ecological site information that is a pristine site. But we had a very important problem with the meadows here from the Patagonia, because the meadows in the steppe were historically used for cattle grazing. So the information of how a meadow without human use is very difficult to find. Very difficult. I don't know if there is any. So what I did is to take those publications that said that the load of the meadows were low or very low. So we assume that a meadow that has a low livestock charge is the most similar we can find here as a pristine site. That's for the meadows.
And meadows, yeah. Sorry, meadows are wet meadows, are machinas. Those are the wet meadows, the wet meadows. Okay, that's
in the steppe. And about the second question, we are working with Santiago. It's connected, Santiago Varela, because that is a very good question. But how do you assume, for example, you have horticulture site in a farm? How do you know which ecological sites correspond to that horticulture site? So we estimated this another work I didn't have time to present, to estimate which ecological site corresponds to a point based on topographic and climate variables. Because the ecological sites are mainly determined by climate, soil texture, and topographic conditions. So we made an estimation. I can share with you of for example, a point that's used for pasture or horticulture. Which is the ecological site of this point? Which is the potential of this site? So we also made a model to estimate this situation in places we didn't know.
Thanks.
Okay, I think there were questions in the chat. Anyone wants to say it? Pablo says, the value of many of your results resides in the fact that you are working on a relatively poorly studied area without much background info. Yes. For example, the soil map you are developing is the first one for this region at such level of detail. Now, concerning the tool you developed for your PhD thesis, who are the intended end users for your online tool for grasslands productivity estimation? Did you get feedback from users regarding the tool? Yes, the final users are the local producers that want to make an estimation of their fields, for the technicians that need to make an estimation, or for those technicians that need to make a management plan for the farms in order to get subsidies from the forest law. Because that was the main problem that driven my thesis. We need to make a plan and we don't have the livestock productivity. So with this tool, everyone almost with a computer and internet can make an estimation for their field. And yes, I get feedback and they gave me a lot of ideas, but yet I didn't have to put them in use. But they were very satisfied with the tool. And they were asking for make this tool for the Neuquén area also, but we need to put more data into the model. Then for the presentation, Morisca says, what variable types have you used to represent rocky or shallow soil regions? Thank you, Morisca. In those regions, for example, for the soil carbon model, I added manually points, for example, from rocky sites that I knew there is 0 soil carbon. So I manually added points and estimated that data with Landsat surface representation. So there is a specific response of the rocks. So the model quickly takes this information and says, no, here is low carbon or very low carbon because of the reflectance of the Landsat imagery. Is this okay? Period, Lionel. Then for your presentation, what do you think about the fact that when you collect data to compare uses area, you have more data from uses area? Do you think that this can create any bias? Well, in fact, I am comparing the data of the use zone with the model of pristine areas. I'm not comparing each between them. The comparison is between the use and the model of the pristine areas. So each use has its own response. But yes, for example, you can see in the graph that there are many uses. I have little information. I'm most really sure that I'm going to remove that analysis because that's not enough information. But there are other uses, for example, horticulture without other chemicals. Well, we have a lot of information. We can make some, give some results and some conclusions about that. Yes. And Santiago Varela makes a comment in relation to Pablo's question. What do you think about the main limitations or warnings to consider when proposing the use of these tools? Well, for example, the forest productivity model, I recommend it to use with very high confidence in the study area I used. But outside that area, I recommend it with some precautions because the model is very good for the study area, but I recommend to make a comparison for example, with other publications of that zone to test if the model goes good or not. So you have the people that use the model outside the study area, I recommend to make some comparisons with other publications. Are there more questions, comments? Probably slope or elevation could be explanatory variables for those regions. Yes. Or any legacy soil map, sure. Yes. We have data from 1980. But we don't have information of what was happening with that soil. For example, what was the use? Many methods, there is no information. So it would be good, but there is a lot of lack of data here. That's a problem we are trying to resolve. Camilla, any question?
And then Vanya raised the hand.
Anyone?
Hi, I think I was looking for the chat, but well, thanks for the interesting presentation. And I was just thinking, like, for the, I think grass prevents seedlings to sprout, right?
Yes.
But I also think that, I don't know if it's in your work, how grazing prevents those seedlings that manage to go out, how the grazing affects those seedlings that are successful, because I assume they eat it, not somehow.
Yes. Yes,
So,
that was already studied by other authors, and they found that if the cattle is present, they prefer the seedlings. So you cannot keep the cattle if you want to restore a forest, because you are not going to recover anything. But the second question was I want to recover. I take out the cattle. What happens? And that's the question my thesis comes to answer.
okay, thanks.
But this is different from other forests. Other parts of the world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more comments, questions, ideas?
No, I think it was very good. And we can end it here and meet in the next one.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm here myself. I mute you, Barbie, because there was a repeat. Thank you very much for your presence, your comments. The seminar will be recorded if anyone wants to see it. That wasn't today. And I don't know, maybe we can talk with Pablo for the next seminar. We accomplished 1 hour seminar.
Thank you, Fabio.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Wait,
Bobby.
the camera. Wait.
Bye, thank you.
Yes. Wait. Goodbye. Thank you very much.
Muted. Bye-bye.
Sorry, there was a repeat of the sound.
Abusive. No. Yeah, but very nice.
Bye.
Okay. Well, see you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Anaí. Oh, se fue, vale. No quería que se vaya. Quería saludar.
Pero se queda Luigi.
Se quedó Luigi. ¿Cómo estás, Luigi?
No, se quedó yo tengo una pregunta, pero no me animo a hacerla en inglés porque parece que me medio rebuscada.
Sí.
En realidad es rebuscada, pero para que lo tomemos.
Sí, para que sí.